I was just a 5-year-old girl when the world collapsed, my father died, and the only person who truly loved me disappeared with him. That same year, my younger sister was born, and I lost the right to be a child forever. If you have ever felt that your parents' love is not about you, if you have ever lived under the same roof with a child who is allowed to do everything while you are just a shadow in the kitchen with a rag in your hands, then this story is about you. This is a story about betrayal, loneliness, maternal injustice, about how I became a mother to a child who was not my own, and how they wanted to take everything from me, at that time, the whole meaning of my life. My dad was a kind man, calm, attentive. He loved me very much. We used to draw, build with construction sets, and read books together. He always found time for me, even after work. When he was sick, my mom often cried, but not in front of me. And after his death, everything changed. At the funeral, I held my mother's hand, but she didn't hold me. It was as if she didn't even notice me. Everyone around me said, "Poor woman, left alone, pregnant," and I was standing next to her, and I was hurt not only because of my father, but also because I was somehow pushed to the background. After that, my mom stopped talking to me, except when she was ordering me to do something. She was focused on herself and the child she carried under her heart. I tried to be obedient. I made myself food, cleaned, folded things. Just to help in some way. But there was no gratitude. Not a single word. Only silence. I remember one day I cut my finger while opening a can of canned food. I screamed, it hurt. My mom was sitting next to me, but she didn't even turn around. She was stroking her stomach and looking out the window. I was very lonely then. When Leah was born, things got even worse. She was very beautiful, blue eyes, chubby cheeks, a snub nose. Everyone said she was a copy of her dad. And Mom blossomed next to her. She smiled, sang her songs, hugged her, kissed her. And I was just there for her. Like a nanny. Over time, my mother shifted the responsibility for household chores to me even more, because she had Leah and she needed a lot of time. I washed the floors, cleaned, cooked, everything was on me. I also took care of Leah. I fed her, changed her diapers, went for walks with her. Very quickly I had to become too adult, but despite all my efforts, whenever Leah would get hysterical or scream, it was always my fault. Always I did something wrong, and especially when Leah grew up a little bit, after any crying or whining, my mother always believed her, not me. She took my toy. Leah would complain, even though it was mine. My mom was right on top of it. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Give it back. They didn't ask me anything. I just had to listen. If something was wrong, I was punished. He wouldn't let me go for a walk. He would lock me in my room, he wouldn't let me go to my birthday party. And so on again and again. I was often left alone in the room. And only then did I remember my dad. I had his old t-shirt and hid it under my pillow. I would hug it and imagine that he was there. I whispered, "You said you would always be with me. I need you so much. Come back at least in my dreams." I did well at school. I liked going to school because it was the only place where I could feel at least a little bit that I mattered. My teachers praised me. But my mom rarely asked about it. She was only interested, "How is Leah? Didn't she cry? Did she eat anything?" When I was about 10 years old, I already knew that I had to get out of that house. My goal was to go to university. I would cut out articles from newspapers about scholarships, successful students, and their privileges, and keep them in a folder. I hung pictures of the most beautiful cities on the wall and imagined how I would live there. On my own. Without constant reproaches. All I have left of my father is that he taught me to dream, and perhaps this helped me survive and not break down. I learned to endure in silence. No one listened to me, hugged me, or protected me. But I held on. All I had were the memories of my dad. And his words that I heard in my head, even if I hadn't heard them out loud for a long time, "I am with you. Always." When I turned 12, I was already almost completely in charge of the household. Leah was an active child, but very moody. She could throw a tantrum because I didn't give her my pen, and my mother would immediately punish me. I didn't even try to explain. I just accepted everything in silence. Once I had to go to my friend's birthday party. We had been friends since childhood, and I was really looking forward to this day. But in the morning, Leah said that I had offended her because I hadn't given her my paints. My mom immediately said, "You can't go to the birthday party. Think about your behavior." I cried in my room, but quietly, so that no one could hear. Then I just lay down on the bed and held my dad's t-shirt to me. It was the only thing that could calm me down. In the 5th grade, I was elected as a head boy. It was unexpected. The class teacher praised me in front of the whole class. She said I was responsible and organized. I was doing a good job. But no one at home knew about it. I didn't even try to tell them. I knew what my mom would say, "So what? Leah will soon go to school, too, and then you will see real progress." I lived quietly in my own world. School, homework, household chores. No hugs, no words of support. Only with the thought that someday I would leave, escape from this house, from this constant feeling of guilt and resentment. I didn't know how, but I knew I had to. Because if I stayed, I would break down. When Leah started school, her mother was all about her. She always prepared beautiful hairstyles for her, put her notebooks in a new backpack, tied bows. And I was on my own. I tied my braids haphazardly, often didn't have time to eat breakfast because I was preparing breakfast not only for myself, but also for my mom and Leah. On Leah's first day of school, my mom even went with her, took a picture of her at the entrance, hugged her, kissed her. I did not have to experience this. On my first day, there was no photo, no hug. Only a short one, "Go, don't be late." I did not envy Leah. But I was hurt. I wanted at least a little care. Sometimes just a kind word. But all I heard was criticism. "You did something wrong again. You swept badly. You didn't clean it right. Look how you look. What will people say?" These words became daily for me. And even when I tried my best, the result was the same. And I was still responsible for Leah. After school, my mother would go to work or on business, and I had to pick up Leah, feed her, check her homework, and play with her. And every time she was naughty or made up a story about me, my mom would take her side again. No explanation, no doubt. Once Leah said that I had hit her. It wasn't true. We were just arguing because she took my paints without asking. My mom slapped me without thinking about it. It was the first time I felt real pain. Not only physical pain. It was also internal. I was punished again, punished unfairly, and I had nowhere to run. I stopped talking at home. I only answered questions. At school, I remained active, participated in competitions, prepared wall newspapers, wrote essays. My teachers praised me. But I knew I had no one to tell about it. In high school, I started earning money. I was very good at writing essays, texts, writing and drawing various wall newspapers, so I started doing it, and I was paid for it. I saved every penny because my mother always had money only for Leah, for new dresses, new bows. And when I came back to me, she would praise my younger sister, comparing us, "Look at your little sister, she's like a princess, not like you," and gave me a disgruntled look for a second. My goal was to go to university and move away. To escape. I knew that only studying was my chance. My mom knew this, but she never asked me how I was doing. Only sometimes she would say, "Remember, we need money. Don't spend it on nonsense." I didn't. I saved in silence. I knew that no one would give me anything. I would have to get everything myself. I knew I had to break out. I liked math. I was fascinated by logic and algorithms. There was something calming about numbers, something honest. Everything was analyzed there, not like in my family, where the truth was distorted every day. That's when I decided, I'm going to enter a technological university. I will create a life for myself from scratch. I will succeed. Because I couldn't be a shadow anymore. But there were still several long years before that, and each of them was like a marathon. Without support. No hugs. Just me. And my dad's voice in my head, I'm always here for you. You are strong. In the 9th grade, I discovered programming. We had an optional web design class, and I plunged into it. It became my refuge. Code was a language where you didn't have to shout to be heard. You just read it. And it worked. In my senior year, I applied for admission to the university I dreamed of, and it was in another city. I was preparing very intensively for admission, studying, working. I knew that this was my only chance to change something, to change my life for the better, and I wanted it with all my heart. And one day I found out that I had received a scholarship to the university I had long dreamed of. It was one of the best in the state. I was sitting in the kitchen, holding the letter in my hands, and I couldn't believe it. It was like a dream. I was shaking with emotion. I expected my mom to be at least a little bit happy. But when I showed her the letter, she just shrugged her shoulders. How do you think you're going to live now? Who will help you? I was silent. I was already used to her not supporting me. But in my heart, I was happy. This was my chance. My escape. Moving to the university was my first step into independent living. I settled in a dormitory, in a room for two. My roommate was a quiet girl from another state. She immediately asked if I wanted to have lunch together. I didn't even know what to say. I wasn't used to being invited anywhere. The first days were hard. A new city, new people, new rules. But I learned quickly. I liked that no one judged me. Here I was just a girl named Emily. Not the eldest daughter who is always to blame, not the one who has to carry everything. I studied a lot. And almost immediately I found a part-time job in a small cafe, but with very nice people. I had to help, and they created a convenient schedule for me, after classes and until late at night, because at that time there were more customers and help was needed. It was enough for food, transportation, and sometimes cheap coffee. I did not complain. It was my new life. In my first year, I started smiling for the first time in many years. Not for show, not mechanically. Just because I felt good. I walked around campus with a book in my hand and found myself breathing more freely. But at the same time as I was rising, Leah was falling. My mom started calling more often. She said that Leah had changed. That she had become rude and naughty. That she was being called to school because she was smoking and skipping classes. I listened and remained silent. Because I knew, Leah had always been like this. My mom just didn't want to see it before. After another call, my mom suddenly said, "Could you come over? It's hard for me. I can't cope." I answered that I couldn't, I had school and work. It was the first time I said no. And for the first time she hung up without saying goodbye. A few weeks passed after that incident. I was completely immersed in my studies and work. I rarely checked my phone because I knew that the calls from my mom were only about Leah and her problems. And so it went on. Leah did not want to change, and it seemed that the older she got, the harder it was to talk to her, the harder it was to find an approach to her. She lived as if the world revolved only around her, everyone was obliged to her, she had claims to everyone, she was the only angel. And every time I came home, and I came for the weekends sometimes, because my mother always complained that I had forgotten about them, that I was a bad daughter and I didn't care about my own mother at all. She often manipulated that she was in poor health, that there was no one to look after her. But every time I came home, I was overcome with anger. I couldn't see the carefree life my mother had arranged for her younger daughter, while she continued to manipulate me and blame me for everything. I made many attempts to talk to Leah, but her answers were always short: "Stay out of my life, go do your own, loser." These statements were heard quite often, starting when Leah found out that I was working part-time as a waitress, a janitor. But in my 3rd year, I used my skills again. I was good at writing texts, essays, and test papers. And it was a salvation for me, because I could do it at my own convenience, from home, or just in the park, taking my laptop with me. Over time, I started going home less and less, I just didn't feel like it. I didn't like the feeling I had at home, with my closest people. But my mother kept calling, writing short messages about what a bad daughter I was and how she had forgotten about me. At the same time, she was never interested in my success, business, studies, just like in childhood. But I was so used to it that I learned to take it without any emotions. One day, after the lessons, I saw several missed calls from my mother. At first I wanted to ignore them, but these calls seemed annoying and I thought that my mother was in trouble again. And the next call was about that. Mom said that Leah was pregnant. I sat in the dorm and listened in silence. Mom said that Leah would not admit who the baby was from, cried, did not eat. That she doesn't want anything. That she feels bad. And that it was hard for both of them. The mother called me intensively for several days in a row asking me to come. And I couldn't refuse. I understood, Leah couldn't cope on her own. And neither could my mom. Even though I had been used to unequal treatment since childhood, everything looked serious now. I said I would come for the weekend. I saw Leah in a state I had never seen her in before. She didn't look like the stubborn, loud girl she always was at home. She was silent. She was lying in her room. Mom was exhausted. I didn't ask too many questions. That was the beginning of a new chapter, where I became a part-time nurse, psychologist, and logistician along with my studies and work. I took Leah to checkups, helped her keep a pregnancy diary, and prepared lists of necessary things. My mom thanked me occasionally, but still. Mostly she sighed and muttered something like, "It's good that at least you understand something." I went home every weekend, but my mother always demanded more. Then more often. University was going according to plan, and I tried to keep up. It was hard for me, but I held on to successfully complete another year of study. And of course, in mid-June I came home. I was happy to be able to work remotely, to close myself off in my own world and do what I loved. When Leah started swelling and had difficulty walking, I stayed with her. I saw her face change when she heard the baby's heartbeat. It was the first time she saw fear in her eyes, real fear. She started talking more. Not always pleasantly. She often blamed her mother for everything, for not looking after her, for not supporting her. But she treated me more equally. Perhaps because she saw that I did not argue. I just act. My mother continued to work, but she was less and less at home. She got tired quickly. She often left everything to me. "You know how to do it. You always knew how." The birth hadn't happened yet, but I was worried about how Leah would cope, because she wasn't used to taking care of anyone, but I hoped that when she saw her own child, she would have a real maternal instinct and take responsibility for this child and envelop him with her love and care. It all happened early in the morning. My mother ran into my room and sat down on the bed with concern. She spoke quickly, her voice trembling, "Leah is having contractions. We are going to the hospital. If you can, come with us." It was hard for me to understand what had happened for a few minutes, as I had been working from evening until 3 a.m. I didn't ask any questions. I just packed my things and we left. The road was fast, and my fatigue quickly dissipated. I already knew what it was like to be the one who has to and just did what was necessary. When we arrived at the hospital, I was allowed to go in with the watering can. My mom was waiting at the door. She was pale and silent. We just nodded to each other. The hospital needed some things, so I ran to buy them. Then I talked to the doctor, then to the nurse. I already knew the process. I read everything I could on the internet. The labor lasted a long time. I was constantly with her. Leah was screaming, angry, asking me to leave her, but I was holding her hand. I was not angry in return. I knew she was scared. When it was all over, when I saw this little boy for the first time, I burst into tears. I didn't know why. I just cried. Because it was something new. And because I already realized that I would be the one to lend a shoulder again. Leah was exhausted. Her face was gray, she was looking at the ceiling, not at the baby. Mom was also silent. She only said, "It's going to be hard." I didn't answer. I knew it would be. The first days after the birth were hard. We took turns spending the night in the hospital. I brought food, bought diapers, filled out paperwork. Leah hardly touched the baby. She often asked me or her mother to take him to her. She said she didn't have the strength. When we were discharged, it became even harder at home. The child cried at night. Leah was irritated. My mom didn't have time to do anything. I had to be there for her. I fed the baby, changed diapers, put her to bed. Sometimes Leah would come and take the baby, but it felt like an unimaginable burden for her. She often stayed in the room with headphones on, listening to music, scrolling through her phone. My mom worked again until late at night. Sometimes I wanted to scream. I was not the mother of this child. But I was the only one who really cared about him. I wrote my papers when the child was sleeping or at night. It was hard. Very hard. But I didn't give up. My mother always told me that everything was fine, Leah would take care of the baby, she just had postpartum depression, she needed to step back, rest, sleep, and then everything would change. I saw how day after day passed and how Leah gradually returned to her old self. She began to leave the house with her friends and return later. Then she would leave the child for the whole day without warning. My mom pretended not to see. And I silently took on more. I didn't know how long I could take it. Especially since I was going to university and the life I had been trying to change for so long. But even then I realized that counting on Leah was a futile exercise, and I felt very sorry for the boy. I knew what it was like not to feel a mother's love, care, and affection. And I felt some responsibility for this child even then. I had a lot of thoughts in my head that contradicted each other. My life, my future, which I dreamed of so much, was waiting for me. But I couldn't leave the boy either, I was too attached to him. I couldn't talk to my mother, she always said that it was necessary to help Leah, they were struggling and I had to, I was a family member. I was overwhelmed by a lot of emotions at the same time, I couldn't make a decision, but I had to. Not now. Then I decided to transfer to a part-time program, but then I lost my scholarship. I realized that I had no one to take care of me and that I had to make a decision about how to live my life. So I found a job in our city at a small company that prints books. Sagewood Press and Publishing, and I continued to work part-time, writing term papers or diploma papers. It wasn't easy to get back to studying after all that. I was a few weeks behind. Everything was falling apart at the same time, coursework, deadlines, group projects. But I knew I had to finish. This was my path. The only way out. I worked nights again, wrote papers, and joined online classes. My teachers were cold at first, but when they saw my perseverance, they started to meet me halfway. I didn't ask for pity. The only thing that mattered to me was not to stop. I continued to go to work at the company 3 days a week. I continued to help Leah and my mother, but nothing changed. In my last year of study, the university announced a program for graduates and internship at a large company in several cities in the state, including our city. They selected a few of the best students. I applied, even though I didn't believe it would work out. There were a lot of strong students. This information made me excited again and made me want to believe that I could do something and deserve a better future. And one morning, while looking through my mail, I saw a letter. I was invited for an interview. I went in a suit I borrowed from a friend. I was terribly nervous. But I held my nerve. I spoke confidently, briefly, honestly. I knew I didn't have the perfect experience. But I had something else. The ability not to give up. A week later, I got a call. I was hired. I was sitting at the bus stop, holding the phone, and couldn't say anything. I was accepted. I got a chance. A real chance. I worked in a modern office with a young team. At first, I didn't talk to anyone too much. I just listened, studied, and completed tasks. Then it became easier. People were friendly. One manager told me, "You are very accurate. And you work calmly." That's rare. For the first time, I felt that someone needed me as a person. As an employee. As an adult. Not as a shadow or an assistant. But as a separate person. At home, everything was the same. Leah often disappeared for the whole day when my mom had days off. After the office, I would go home, cook, take care of the child, and help my mother. It was hard, but I managed. Because I had my dream and I knew that I had no right to miss the chance. Leah had long lived in a parallel world. She would come, take things, and disappear again. Her new boyfriend, Jason, sometimes came with her, sometimes waited in the car. There was something disturbing about him, but my mom didn't say anything. She once remarked quietly, "The main thing is that she's getting better." One morning, Mom woke up early as usual. She went into Leah's room to see how the child was doing. But Leah was not there. The bed was made. A boy was sleeping peacefully in the crib. Next to him, on the blanket, was a folded piece of paper. It was Leah's handwriting. The note was short, "This life does not suit me. I am leaving. I need to see the world. Jason and I have moved to another state. Don't look for me." Mom didn't know what to do. She could not leave her child. And again, my mother, in her nightgown, with a robe draped over her shoulders, her hair disheveled, stood at my door, confused. Her voice was shaky, uncertain. She said only, "Leah is gone. She left. She left a note. I don't know what to do." She handed me the note. I read it and couldn't believe it. Jason was the same guy Leah had just met recently. We were silent for a while. It was painful, but not surprising. Deep down, I knew she could do this. But I didn't think she would leave everything behind just like that. Especially the child. This time we didn't fight. We were just silent. The boy was sleeping in the crib. And we already knew that everything had changed for good. And now everything was up to us. I stayed with my mom that day. We looked after the baby together, talked about everyday things, about schedules, about how to organize everything. But deeper down, we didn't touch anything. It was too painful to admit that one daughter was gone, and the other had to save her again. The next days were a blur. My mom started saying again that maybe Leah would change her mind. That maybe it wouldn't be forever. But I saw her eyes. She knew it wasn't temporary. I decided to transfer some of my work to a remote format. The management was against it, but I explained the situation. They said, "Fine. But eventually, you will have a full schedule." I agreed. I already knew I had to balance. I had to be strong. And not to let myself burn out. Month after month passed. Leah did not return and did not get in touch with me. But she wrote to my mom regularly. She did not ask how her son was. She didn't ask how we were doing. She just asked for money. At first, it was a few short messages. "Hi, Mom. Can you send some money to my card? It's hard here." Then it became more frequent. And the amounts increased. My mom did not refuse. She transferred everything she could. Sometimes she borrowed from friends. She would tell me, "She's alone there, it's hard for her." I didn't say anything. I was in pain. But I didn't want to contradict her. I knew that my mom was living in the illusion that if she helped, Leah would change. That somehow it would all go away. I resumed working full-time. I worked from 9 to 6. After work, I came straight home. A nanny, whom I paid, took the child. My mom was already getting tired quickly. She often went to bed early. More and more things fell on me. I took my nephew to classes, to checkups, and went for walks with him on weekends. He grew up to be a kind, sensitive boy. And when he called me by my first name, not Mom, I heard respect in his voice. Not imposed, but real respect. One evening, I went to my mom's room to leave her medicine. She was holding her phone in her hands. On the screen, she was texting with Leah. Another request, Mom, send me at least 200 more. I'll pay you back. Honestly. And at the bottom is a message from her mom, okay. Tomorrow. I couldn't stand it. She doesn't ask about him. About the kid. She doesn't care. And you're helping her anyway. Mom looked down at me. She was silent. You do realize that she's not coming back, right? She's just taking advantage of you. She always does. She's my child, my mom said quietly. I didn't say anything. I just walked out. I was tired of fighting for justice in this family. History was repeating itself. And again, I was the one who held everything together. But this time I knew I would not break. Because now I had someone to hold on to. I started collecting documents. I didn't tell my mom about it right away. I just went to lawyers and consulted them. I asked them how to properly arrange guardianship. How to protect myself. And the baby. It was not out of revenge. I wanted to protect the boy. He couldn't be the son of a mother who was not interested in him, in his life, and who didn't know when she would return, or even if she would return at all. When I first told my mother that I wanted to apply for temporary custody, she was silent for a long time. Then she said yes. But she is a mother. And I am a person. And I will not let another life be ruined. She did not argue. She just sighed. I knew she was in pain. But I also knew that I was right. And this time I would not back down. The process of obtaining guardianship was more complicated than I had imagined. The lawyer immediately warned me that it would not be quick. I had to collect documents, certificates, and go through interviews. And the main thing was to prove that it was for the child's benefit. The first step was to see a psychologist. For me, for the child, for the mother. Everyone had to be evaluated. At first, my mother refused. She said it was humiliation. But later she gave in. She began to see that I was serious. And, perhaps for the first time in my life, she supported me silently. It was hard for me to explain to the boy what was happening. He was still small. But I tried to be as honest as possible. I said simply, you are with me because I love you and care about you. And I want you to be safe. He didn't ask too many questions. He trusted me. And that was the most valuable thing. While the legal procedures were going on, Leah chatted with her mom twice. She wrote that she needed money. She said she was in trouble. She said she wanted to come home. But every time she disappeared after the transfer. My mom sent her money a few more times. But after one incident, she stopped. Leah sent a voice message. She blamed her mom for all her troubles. She said that she never loved her. That she was to blame for the way her life turned out. Her mom listened and then simply deleted her number. I don't want to anymore, she said. Enough. I'm exhausted. We sat in the kitchen. It was late. The boy was already asleep. And for the first time, we were talking calmly. Without insults, without reproaches. I have been trying to understand her all my life, my mother said quietly. I devoted my whole life to her, and I wasn't a good mom to you. I didn't know what to say. It felt as if something had thawed inside me. As if something that had been locked away for a long time had finally come out. I thank you for your love and care for this boy, she said. Those words meant a lot. But I knew it was not over yet. There were still papers. There were still court dates. But we did it. I was now Marcus's legal guardian. 8 years passed. We still lived in my parents' house. The same house in which I grew up with pain, with resentment, with daily comparisons, was now a place of silence. At least it seemed so. My nephew is already 9. He went to the 3rd grade, played soccer, was fond of science, and read books about space. Every evening we had our ritual, hot tea, a little talk, and a few pages before bed. He called me simply Emily. And I didn't impose anything else. Leah didn't show up all these years. Not a single call. Not a single card for my son's birthday. Not once did she ask how he was doing. But she continued to contact her mother. She asked for money. Sometimes for rent, sometimes for treatment, sometimes for tickets. My mom would send it. Then she would sigh and say, "At least she answered." I got used to it. I accepted that my mother would not change completely. That she would still have that naivety, that belief that her daughter would change. But even she started to get tired. She answered less often. She was with us more, with the 2 of us. But the peace was deceptive. One day everything turned upside down again. It happened on an ordinary autumn morning. I was making breakfast, the boy was packing his backpack for school, when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw her. Leah. She was standing on the doorstep in an old jacket, with a suitcase in one hand and a plastic bag in the other. Her hair was tousled and her eyes were calm. As if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't disappeared for 9 years. "Hi," she said. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. My mom heard the voice and came out of the room and froze. "Mom, I'm back," Leah said it as if she was going to get bread. She came into the house alone. She sat on the couch and took off her shoes. I stood in the kitchen and watched her immediately behave as if she hadn't gone anywhere. My mom later said that she needed time to get back on her feet. That she had come back for a little while. But I already knew, nothing is ever just for a little while with Leah. The first days after Leah's return were tense. She behaved calmly, even silently. She often sat in the kitchen with her phone in her hands, sipping coffee. My mom walked around her like a wounded bird, trying to be gentle. I kept to myself. I didn't get involved in conversations. Leah didn't talk to me at all. I saw my nephew looking at her. Not with joy. Rather, with curiosity. He simply did not remember her. And when my mom said to him, "This is your mom," he just nodded and went to his room. Without a word. Gradually, Leah began to act. At first, quietly. She would pick up the boy from school without warning. She bought him sweets, brought him expensive toys. She tried to create an image of a mother who had returned and would make up for everything. But he did not run into her arms. He politely said thank you. And he looked at me, looking for permission. It didn't make me angry. It scared me. Because I knew how easily she could convince my mom. And how quickly my mom could start seeing only her side again. A few weeks later, Leah settled into the house completely. Without talking. She just put her things in her old room. She started taking her mother's pension to shop. She had loud conversations on the phone at night. She brought the same man to the house with whom she had disappeared 9 years ago. I tried not to get into conflicts. I already had my own space in the house, I had a job, I took care of my child, I helped my mother. But every day the line was blurred. They started playing loud music and having late dinners with alcohol. I could hear my nephew crying at night. And my heart was clenched with powerlessness. At first, my mom would say, "Give her time. She is back. She is looking for herself." But the more I kept silent, the more confident Leah became. Direct attacks began. She would devalue my work, mock me, accuse me of deliberately turning the boy against her. I realized that I could not keep silent any longer. But I didn't know what to do yet. I grew up in this house without a voice. And now the story was coming back only stronger, more aggressively. And again, with the same person. I held on for a long time. I was silent. I endured. But every day it became more and more unbearable. Leah was behaving more and more defiantly every week. Her husband, the same Jason, stayed overnight, smoked right in the kitchen, walked around the house in his underwear, and swore loudly on the phone. My nephew became more nervous, started waking up in the middle of the night crying. It was tearing me up. The first open scandal happened when I told Jason not to make any noise after 11. He just laughed and threw something insulting. Leah intervened and started yelling that I was always jealous of her, that I was controlling everyone and thought I was better than everyone else. My mom was silent. After that incident, I decided that it would not go on like that. I started looking for a place to live. I didn't tell my mom right away. But I already knew it was time to leave. My nephew stayed with me almost all the time. He asked me not to leave him with Leah and her husband. When I told my mom that I was moving, she didn't say anything. She just sighed and looked down. I packed my things in one day. I found a small apartment with 2 rooms. I took my nephew with me, even though I was still officially only his guardian. I continued working at the company, was promoted several times, and started earning 10 times more than I had at the beginning. And I dreamed of buying a new house, and perhaps now was the most appropriate time to finally do it. However, a few weeks after I moved in, I accidentally found out that my mother had signed the house we grew up in over to Leah. In its entirety. She didn't tell me about it. I found out from a friend who helped me with the mortgage and saw the changes in the registry. Now I understood why my mother was so calm about the behavior of her daughter and her young husband. She couldn't do anything. This house already belonged to Leah. When I asked my mother, she was silent at first. Then she said quietly, "She has nothing. And you are strong. You will manage." These words hurt more than any blow. It was not the first time. But this time it was for good. How could you so easily neglect me again? I, who was pulling everything. I was always there for you. I, who never disappeared, never demanded, never screamed. I was just there. And this was not enough again. I was overwhelmed with anger. And resentment. So deep that it was hard to breathe. I wanted to tell her everything, how she had turned a blind eye for years, how she had justified it, how she had given everything to someone who had given nothing in return. But I held back. Because I knew that nothing would change. I did not scream. I did not reproach. I just said, "Okay. Then I'll deal with it myself." As always. And I left. Thinking that now I had to take care of myself. And my nephew. Because no one else would do it. While we were looking for a house, life in the rented apartment gradually settled into a rhythm. My nephew and I felt calmer. He had his own corner, where he was not woken up by nightly quarrels, where he could sleep without fear. I worked, took him to clubs, and did his homework. We became a team. But Leah did not leave us alone. At first, there were calls. She would appear on the phone suddenly, a drunken voice, screams, accusations. "You stole my child from me, you want him to hate me, I will destroy you." Such words were heard often. At first, I would hang up the phone. Then I started recording everything on a dictaphone. I needed to have proof because anything could have happened to her. She would call in the middle of the night, from new numbers. She sent messages. And the more I kept silent, the angrier she became. One day she shouted into the phone, "You were never my sister. You're just a traitor. Everyone will regret you." I did not answer. But I wrote down everything. Then new accusations began. She shouted into the phone, "I will get my custody back. This is my son, and you have no right to keep him. You only got him welfare because he has no father. You're just sitting on the benefits. I will prove it." These words hurt because I did receive a small amount of support as the official guardian of a fatherless child. But every cent was spent on the boy, on his school, food, and development. I didn't benefit from this situation, only responsibility and care. I worked to ensure that he had everything. And most importantly, I gave him my love, which he did not receive from his own mother. And in her mouth it sounded like I was taking advantage of someone else's misfortune. I turned on the recorder again. One day she left me a voicemail at 3 in the morning. I will not let you live in peace. I will erase everything you have built. I'm going to burn down your house, okay? You don't know what I'm capable of. Her voice was trembling not from pain but from hatred. I no longer doubted that this was no longer just a family conflict. It was a direct threat. I started saving all the audio and messages to a separate cloud, in case he tried to physically appear in my life again. Later, Leah asked to come over. She said she wanted to talk. That she wanted peace. That she was ready to apologize. I didn't believe it, but I agreed on the condition that we meet at my house. My nephew was supposed to be there, so I played it safe. I installed a small camera in the room where I invited her. When she came, she looked calm. But it didn't last long. Within 10 minutes, the conversation turned to shouting. She insulted me, my nephew, mentioned my mother, blamed me for everything. Do you think he loves you? She shouted. He's just afraid of you. You took him away from me. He is mine. He is my son, do you hear me? The boy stood aside, pressed against the wall. She turned to him. And you are an ungrateful puppy. Have you forgotten who gave birth to you? Do you live with this saint now? Enough, I said. Stop it. Aha. Are you afraid that he will hear the truth? He'll never love you because you're just another woman's aunt. He may live with you, but you can't betray your blood. And I will prove it in court. You will be responsible for taking my life. I silently rushed to my nephew, hugged him, and he burst into tears. Leah was shouting something else, waving her arms. Then she grabbed a vase from the table and threw it at the wall. The glass shattered, and the boy cried. She silently turned around and left the room, slamming the door. I locked it behind her. The camera recorded everything. And this time I wasn't afraid. Because I had the facts. And now I knew what to do with them next. After that meeting, I acted quickly. The very next day I made an appointment with the social service. I brought everything with me, video from the camera, audio recordings of the calls, screenshots of the threats. The counselor listened carefully, often stopping and asking questions. Then she said briefly, "You did the right thing to contact us. This case requires immediate intervention." Official steps began. Social workers came to the house where my mother and Leah were staying. I told them that my nephew was temporarily living with me and explained the situation. They were not surprised. Their tone was one of concern, but also of confidence. They had seen this kind of thing many times. The lawyer I consulted helped me file a petition with the court to deprive Leah of her parental rights. The video with the vase was the main evidence. I also had recordings of her shouting at my son, insulting and threatening me. All this was enough to start the process. My mom didn't learn about the trial from me, Leah told her. New calls began. She was crying, begging, screaming. She said that I was going against my own blood. That I would destroy the family. Mom, I answered. Did you see how he cried when she called him a puppy? Did you see how he shuddered when he heard her voice? Is this family? Where was it for 9 years? Didn't she need her son? And why am I telling you this? You were there, you saw everything and you know everything? My blood was boiling inside me. I couldn't hear my mother's words, they were sharper than a blade. And then I asked in a calm tone, Mom, why is this? Why are you on her side again? After all we've been through? Mom was silent. And then, for the first time in many years, she said something I never expected. To be honest, I'm afraid of her. I don't know what she is capable of. It was the truth. A belated truth. But still the truth. A few days later, my mom and I met in a coffee shop near my house. She called me and said she wanted to talk. I thought for a long time whether I should go. But I agreed. She looked tired. She was sitting with a cup of tea, twirling the spoon in her hands and not talking. I waited. I didn't rush her. I never thought it would end like this, she finally said. I spent my whole life trying to protect her. To justify her. I thought she was just weaker. And now? She fell silent, looked out the window. Then she said quietly. She's out of control. And I don't control her. She does what Jason tells her to do. He yells at her, throws things at her. And she just obeys. I continued to take care of Marcus, to protect him, and to deal with the paperwork for Leah's termination of parentage. And it was at this time that something else became known. One evening, my mother called. Her voice was anxious, confused. Emily, a letter came to our address. From the bank. About the house. I don't understand. I went to see her that evening. She handed me a letter, an official notice from the bank about the seizure of the property and preparations for an auction sale. The house she had signed over to Leah was under mortgage. Leah had taken out a loan against the house, a large sum that she had not repaid. Now the bank had every right to sell the property to repay the debt. My mother sat in silence with her hands in her lap. Her shoulders were slumped, her face pale. I betrayed you, she said suddenly. You, and Marcus, and my father. If he were alive, he would never have let me do this. Never. I wanted so badly for one of you to be happy. But she destroyed everything. Everything we had. I didn't say anything. Not out of anger, out of exhaustion. At that moment I realized how deeply my mother was to blame. And that her betrayal is now a punishment for her as well. I want to fix what is still possible, she whispered. If necessary, I will tell everything in court, the whole truth. That she brought it all to this. Because this is another piece of evidence. She is not capable of taking responsibility for anything in her life, let alone a human life. So how can she be responsible for a child? Her eyes were wet, but for the first time, they were hard. For the first time, I saw my mother not as a victim, but as a person who takes responsibility. Belatedly. But sincere. This news became another argument in the case. The lawyer said that such financial irresponsibility of the mother is a significant point in the decision to deprive her of parental rights. And the mother's testimony would be valid if she was willing to testify. She agreed. This time without hesitation. The final hearing was scheduled for the middle of the month. I was nervous even though I had all the evidence, even though the lawyer was confident in our position. A trial is always more than just facts. It always involves a little bit of humanity, a little bit of pain, a little bit of fear. Mom was preparing for her speech. She reread the text that we had written together with the lawyer several times. She was worried that she would cry, that she would break down in the hall. But I said, if you just tell the truth, it will be enough. She nodded. And there was a determination in her eyes that I hadn't seen since childhood. The trial took place in a small room. We were present, our lawyer, a representative of the social service, the judge, and, of course, Leah. She appeared in a dark coat, with her phone in her hands, without greeting anyone. Her gaze slid around the room like a spectator who was not interested in any of this. She didn't have a lawyer, she refused to have one. She said she could handle it herself. Her position was simple: I took the child by deception, the mother was against her, everyone fabricated the story. No regrets. No recognition. Our lawyer was the first to speak. He clearly and calmly outlined the chronology of events, provided video evidence, audio recordings, and letters from the bank. Then they called my mother. She approached the podium slowly, keeping her arms folded. Her voice was a little shaky, but every word was precise. For a long time, I did not want to admit the truth. I defended Leah even when I had nothing to defend. But now I'm here because I want to save my grandson. And to apologize to my eldest daughter. She has never betrayed this family. She is the only one who cared. And I let her lose her home, trust, peace. I see how Leah lives. And I can't close my eyes anymore. The room was silent. Leah grimaced, bit her lip, but remained silent. Then I told my part. I spoke simply. About my childhood. About the boy. About what it was like to live in fear and responsibility when you don't even know who you are. About how Leah would come home drunk, about the thrown-away vase, about Marcus, who would cry at night. The judge listened attentively. Then he spoke. The court understands that the decision to terminate parental rights is extremely serious. But when it comes to the child's safety, psychological abuse, and stability, we must act decisively. A week later, we received the decision. Leah was deprived of her parental rights. I was crying. Not with joy, but with relief. Like after a long swim when you finally reach the shore. The boy didn't know all the legal details yet, but he felt that something had changed. He just hugged me and said, "You will always be my family." I did not answer. I just held him tight. I knew he was right. After the court decision, life seemed to stop for a few days. Everything around me became quieter. The burden of all the years was still in the air, but for the first time I could breathe calmly. Without looking back, without fear. My nephew and I celebrated this day together. Pizza, a cartoon, and cuddling on the couch. He did not yet fully understand what the court's decision meant. But he understood one thing: we are together. And he was safe. And sometimes that is enough for a child. The next step was to formalize full paternity. The lawyer helped quickly, because now, after Leah's rights were deprived, the procedure was simplified. We went through all the documents, signatures, social inspections in 2 months. Finally, I held a certificate in my hands with my name written in black and white in the column Mother. There was something symbolic about it. I didn't give birth to him, but I was with him in every fear, in every decision, in every step. I bought a new house. It was modest, but it was ours. With a garden where he planted his first apple tree. With the room where we hung his drawings. With a kitchen where we made pancakes together. This house had no history of pain. We created it from scratch. My mom moved in with us. She could not stay in the house that the bank put up for auction. It was too much for her. She repeatedly asked for forgiveness, not with words, but with actions. She became a real grandmother. She read fairy tales, sewed for my labor lessons, and cooked soup when I worked late. I never saw Leah again. She disappeared from the city. We were told that she had gone to work in another state. Her boyfriend changed again. And I didn't care anymore. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted her to have no more power over us. The boy and I used to go to the park every Sunday. It became our tradition. There, among the trees, he once said, "You know, I used to be afraid that you would leave. Like everyone else. But now I know you won't." I squeezed his hand and answered, "I will always be there for you. Just like my dad was with me when I was lonely. I felt him even when I couldn't see him. And you will always feel me." We were silent. We just walked together. I no longer had to prove that I was needed. I no longer had to fight for a place in my family. I created it. And this was my new life. It was not a victory. It was peace. And after everything we had been through, peace was the greatest happiness.